The white fairy lights were strung perfectly across the ceiling of Meridian, the kind of restaurant where they fold your napkin into a swan and the bread basket arrives warm. My brother had chosen it himself, sent the family a group text 3 weeks ago with just the address and the words engagement party be there, no question mark. My brother never used question marks. I arrived early, which I always do, and sat at the far end of the long family table they'd reserved, the chair closest to the window, the one with the view of the street. I'd learned years ago to pick seats near exits. Not because I'm anxious. Because I like to leave quietly when the time comes. My cousin Jake slid into the chair beside me, already loosening his collar. He was the only one in the family who ever sat next to me by choice rather than proximity. "You ready for this?" he said. "I'm always ready," I said. He gave me the look he'd been giving me since we were kids, half pity, half admiration. Like he could see something the others couldn't. My brother Daniel arrived with Lauren on his arm, and the table erupted into the kind of applause that families perform rather than feel. Lauren was wearing a cream wrap dress and a smile I recognized from client presentations, the kind that's been practiced in a mirror until it looks natural. She was beautiful, efficient, and had been making it very clear since Thanksgiving that she found me puzzling. I was the puzzle. The younger sister who didn't quite fit. Daniel had started his marketing firm 4 years ago and grown it fast. He talked about it constantly, the revenue milestones, the major clients, the team he'd built from scratch. He was, by every family metric, the success story. Mom kept his press mentions in a folder on her phone. Dad had printed out one article and framed it in the hallway. I had seen it every time I visited for the past 2 years. My name was not in that hallway. I was the freelancer. The one who worked from home in sweatpants, who showed up to family events without a business card or a title, who answered, "What do you do?" with a vague wave of my hand and the word design. My mother had told her book club I was finding my path. She'd said it gently, the way you describe someone recovering from something. I was 38 years old. I had been finding my path for 16 years. Lauren clinked her glass before the appetizers arrived. "We just want to say thank you all for being here," she said, warm and practiced. "Daniel and I are so excited to start this next chapter, and we couldn't imagine celebrating without the people who matter most." Everyone smiled. My dad raised his glass. "And I have to say," Lauren continued, "seeing how this family shows up for each other, it's one of the things I love most about Daniel. The work ethic, the drive, the ambition." She squeezed his arm and looked around the table. "It really does run in the family." Then she looked at me. Not for long. Just a half second too long. "Well," she said pleasantly, "most of the family." There was a small laugh from my brother's college friend at the other end of the table. Daniel said nothing. My mother pressed her lips together. Jake, beside me, went very still. I took a sip of my water and said nothing. The appetizers came. Conversation broke into smaller streams. I talked to Aunt Carol about her garden, her knee surgery, the new trail she'd been walking every morning. She was 71 and had more energy than most people I knew. She was also the only person at that table who had ever asked me real questions about my work, not out of obligation but actual curiosity. "You're still doing the branding work?" she asked. "Always," I said. She nodded like that meant something. It did, to her. Lauren found her way back to me during the main course. She sat down in the chair that had briefly emptied when Jake went to the restroom, setting her wine glass on the table with the confidence of someone claiming territory. "Claire," she said. And she said my name the way people say it when they've decided to be honest with you for your own good. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," I said. "What is the plan? Like, long term?" She tilted her head, genuinely curious in the way that isn't genuine at all. "I know you do freelance design, and I'm asking because I care about Daniel's family. Is there a growth strategy? A 5-year plan? Because I look at what Daniel has built and I think about what you could build if you just applied that same energy." "Lauren," Daniel said from across the table, but quietly, the way he'd said Daniel when we were children and he needed me to stop embarrassing him in public. "I'm being supportive," she said, not looking away from me. "I'm asking because no one else will. You're smart, Claire. You're talented. I've seen your Instagram. You do beautiful work. But beautiful work doesn't pay for a retirement account. It doesn't build equity. You're almost 40. 38, I said. "Exactly." She said it like I'd made her point for her. You're 38. You're living in that little apartment on Callaway Street. You're driving that old Subaru, and I just think, what is the ceiling? What are you actually building? The table had gone quiet in that particular way where everyone is pretending to have a separate conversation. My Aunt Carol looked at me. Her expression was careful, measured. She knew things that Lauren didn't, and she was waiting to see what I would do. I hear you, I said to Lauren. I appreciate the concern. It's not concern, it's just reality. She smiled. Daniel built something real. You could, too. You don't have to keep scraping by. There's no shame in going and working for someone who can give you stability. A real job, benefits, a future. She put her hand on my arm the way my sister-in-law-to-be had put her hand on my arm, and I looked down at it, and I thought about the email sitting in my drafts folder. The one I'd been writing and deleting for 3 months. My phone was in my jacket pocket. I could feel it. You know what? I said, you're right. Lauren blinked. She'd been expecting pushback. That was why she'd worked up to this all evening. She'd wanted an argument, wanted to feel like she'd said the brave thing to the defensive little sister. I had taken that away from her. She said. Real outcomes matter. Equity matters. Building something that lasts that matters. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. You've given me a lot to think about. I opened my email. Found the draft. Read it one more time. It was addressed to my operations director, my legal team, and my accountant. It outlined the terms of a restructuring I'd been considering since the fourth quarter of last year, one that would, among other things, formally change the ownership structure of Meridian Group LLC to reflect my full operational control rather than the silent partnership arrangement I'd maintained since the beginning. And one other thing. A formal notice to the board of Elevate Marketing, the firm my brother had founded, triggering the clause in the original investment agreement that allowed the silent majority investor to appoint a new executive director if the current director failed to disclose the investment relationship to his personal or professional contacts for more than 36 consecutive months. Daniel had never told anyone I was his investor. Not his fiancée. Not my parents. Not the journalist who wrote the article now framed in my father's hallway. I'd given him 4 years to do it himself. I made one small change to the draft. Added a line. Effective immediately, rather than end of fiscal year. Then I hit send. My phone buzzed within 90 seconds. My operations director, confirmed. Processing now. Do you want me to loop in legal tonight or morning? I typed back, morning is fine. Another buzz. My accountant, Meridian restructuring is complete on our end. Updated filings go out Monday. Do you want the board notification for Elevate sent tonight? I typed, tonight. Claire? My mother was watching me from 3 chairs down. Is everything okay? Everything is great, I said, and I meant it. Lauren had moved back to her own seat. She was talking to my dad, animated, laughing at something he'd said. She had a talent for making people feel seen. I could understand why my brother loved her. She would have made an excellent executive. Daniel's phone buzzed. He picked it up, glanced at it, frowned. Buzzed again. He read something on the screen and the color left his face so fast that my cousin Jake, who had just returned from the restroom, leaned over and said, "You all right, man?" Daniel didn't answer. He was looking at me. "Claire," he said. Not loudly. Very quietly. The way you say someone's name when you're trying to figure out if they're who you think they are. Yeah? I said. What did you do? Lauren looked between us. What's happening? I just received a notification from the Elevate board. Daniel's voice was controlled, but I could see his jaw working. About an investor exercising a governance clause. What investor? Lauren asked. Me, I said. She laughed. A single, confused note. You? I've been Daniel's majority investor since he launched Elevate. 42% equity stake, which comes with board appointment rights under certain conditions. I took a sip of water. One of those conditions is disclosure. The investor agreement required Daniel to disclose the investment relationship to his senior staff and immediate family within the first 2 years of operations. He hasn't done that. That's Lauren turned to Daniel. Is that true? Daniel had set down his fork. Claire, this is not the place. You made it the place, I said simply. Not unkindly. You and your fiancé have spent this entire dinner implying that I have nothing to show for 16 years of work. I think it's fair for the people at this table to have accurate information. You're a silent investor in Daniel's firm? My dad looked like someone had changed the channel without asking. 42%, I said. The original investment was $800,000. I provided it through an LLC specifically so Daniel could say he built the company himself. Which technically he did. He built the operations, hired the team, won the clients. He's genuinely good at what he does. But the initial capital, the bridge loan that kept Elevate alive in the second year when he lost the Hartfield account, and the line of credit he drew on during expansion, all of it came from me. The table was not pretending to have other conversations anymore. That's not possible, Lauren said, and she said it the way people say things that rearrange their world. You're a freelancer. You live on Callaway Street. You drive a 12-year-old Subaru. Yes. I nodded. I bought it because it has a great safety record, and I like the way it handles in winter. I live on Callaway Street because I own the building, and I prefer the third-floor unit for the light. The apartment you're thinking of as small is just under 2,200 square feet. I knocked out a wall 3 years ago. My mother made a sound I'd never heard her make before. Something between a question and a word. You own the building on Callaway, my dad said. I bought it 7 years ago. It was my third property acquisition. I have 9 now, residential and mixed use, across 4 cities. I looked at Daniel. The unit Lauren has been renting in Fairview Heights for the past year and a half. That building is in my portfolio as well. Your property manager is named Greg. He reports to my asset management team. Lauren's wine glass was frozen halfway to her lips. The below-market rent, she said slowly. Daniel said it was because his firm had a corporate relationship with the building. It does, I said. Because I own both. Oh my God. She set down the wine glass. I want to be very clear about something, I said, and I looked around the table because I needed my family to hear this part. The rent reduction was not personal. When Lauren applied for the unit, I didn't intervene. My property manager approved her application on standard criteria. The corporate discount is a policy I have for employees and contractors of companies in my portfolio. Daniel's Elevate qualifies. I didn't adjust anything because it was my future sister-in-law. I mention it now only because she just told me I have no equity. Aunt Carol made a small sound that might have been a laugh. How long? My mother's voice was strange and quiet. How long have you been doing all of this? The first company I started was 16 years ago. A design studio. That's the freelance work everyone knows about. But design was never the end point, it was the beginning. I learned how to build brands, which taught me how to evaluate businesses, which led to my first acquisition at 26. I looked at my hands. The design work I still do now is personal. I take 2 or 3 projects a year that interest me. Everything else is handled by the team. What team? Daniel said. 31 people across operations, legal, acquisitions, and finance. They work remotely. Most of them you've never heard of because I've never had any reason to talk about them at family dinners. The restaurant around us kept going, the other tables laughing, the servers moving, the soft music playing, and in the middle of all of it our table sat like a photograph. Jake, beside me, leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. I'm going to need a minute, he said. To no one in particular. And Meridian, my dad said slowly. He looked around at the restaurant, the fairy lights, the swan napkins, the warm bread basket. This restaurant, I've owned it for 4 years. It's part of a hospitality group, 3 restaurants and a boutique hotel in Asheville I'm developing. I looked at Daniel. The private dining room you reserved for tonight was actually reserved under my name. My events coordinator gave you the family rate. The family rate, he repeated. It's 50% off. Lauren stood up. She didn't storm out, she wasn't dramatic in that way, and I respected that about her. She just stood, walked to the window, and looked at the street. After a moment, she turned back around. Why? She said. Why would you let us? Why would you let him? She gestured at Daniel. He's been going to every dinner for 4 years talking about building his company. You let him say all of that. You sat there and listened. I believed in what he was building, I said. I still do. The investment was real. The value he created at Elevate is real. I didn't want him to feel like he owed me something I wanted him to build. And he did. I looked at my brother. You really did, Daniel. The team you assembled, the culture you created, that's yours. I provided capital. You provided everything else. Daniel was looking at the tablecloth. But, I said, and I let the word land carefully, the disclosure requirement exists for a reason. Not because I need the credit, because a business partner who doesn't disclose a material relationship to his own fiancée has a judgment problem. And tonight, when Lauren looked across this table and implied I had nothing when you sat there and let her, that stopped being a business problem and became something else. Daniel, Lauren said quietly. Her voice had changed. The performance was gone. You knew this whole time that your sister. I thought I could pay her back first, he said. I thought if I paid back the investment before anyone knew, it would just be a loan. Something I dealt with. It wouldn't make the story complicated. The story, Lauren repeated. The story of him building Elevate from scratch. He rubbed his face. I didn't want people to think I had help. The table sat with that for a moment. Aunt Carol reached across and put her hand on mine. She didn't say anything. She'd been silent for most of this. But her hand on mine said what she didn't need to say out loud, that she'd known some version of this was coming for years, that she'd seen me differently than the rest of them did, and that she was proud of me in the quiet and steady way that doesn't need an audience. I squeezed her hand once. The governance clause I triggered tonight doesn't mean I'm taking Elevate from you, I said to Daniel. I'm not appointing myself director. I'm appointing an independent board member to provide oversight while we restructure the disclosure, make everything public, clean, above board. Elevate will still be yours to run. My equity position will be listed on the company's documentation as it should have been from the beginning. I looked at him steadily. Your business is not at risk, Daniel. Only the version of the story where I don't exist. He nodded once. He wasn't angry. He looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for 4 years and didn't know anymore whether he was relieved to set it down. What does this mean for the rent? Lauren asked. She asked it practically, without embarrassment, and I liked her more for that. Nothing changes unless you want it to. You're a good tenant. The unit is yours at the same rate. I looked at her. But I want you to know what you're paying for. Not a corporate discount through a firm. A family decision that I made when I found out where you were moving, because I thought it would be a nice thing to do. She looked at me for a long time. I said some unkind things tonight, she said. You did. I didn't know. I know you didn't. I met her eyes. But not knowing doesn't make the words land differently. You looked at my life and decided it wasn't worth respecting. That's what I've been living with at this table for years, and not just from you. From most of this family. I looked at my parents. You framed Daniel's article. You put it in the hallway. There is no hallway moment for anything I've built, because none of you ever thought to ask. My mother's eyes were wet. Claire, I'm not saying this to hurt you, Mom. I'm saying it because Lauren asked why tonight is the night I stopped staying quiet. I looked at her. This is why. Not the governance clause. Not the investment. Because I spent 16 years building something real, something I'm proud of, and the people sitting at this table have spent that same time feeling sorry for me. And tonight Lauren said it out loud in front of everyone, and my brother didn't say a word. The room was very still. I wanted to know who you all were when you thought I had nothing, I said. I have my answer. I stood, smoothed my jacket. The simple dark blazer Lauren had probably clocked as unremarkable when I walked in and picked up my bag. I kissed Aunt Carol on the cheek. She held my face for a second with both hands the way she had when I was 7, and didn't say anything, and that was exactly right. I said goodnight to the table. I shook hands with Daniel's college friend, who looked like he wished he were anywhere else, and I couldn't blame him. I told the server near the door that dessert should go out in 15 minutes, the tasting menu, the good one, all prearranged, and that the check was already handled. I drove home in my 12-year-old Subaru, through the city at night, past the building on Callaway Street where the lights in the third-floor unit were off because I hadn't been home since morning. I didn't go up. I kept driving, took the long way around the park, and stopped at the 2-4-hour diner on Weston where they know my order and they don't care who I am. I ordered coffee and eggs and sat in the booth by the window and watched the street. My phone buzzed steadily. Daniel 3 times. My mother, twice. A longer message from Lauren that started "I want to apologize," and which I closed without reading, not because I didn't believe her, but because I wasn't ready for it yet. From Jake. A single text that said "I knew it," and then, a minute later, "Also, can I borrow money?" I laughed, alone in the diner, and it was real. Monday morning, my operations director sent me a summary. The Elevate board notification had been received and acknowledged. Daniel had called and spent an hour on the phone with my legal team going through the disclosure timeline. He had been, by all accounts, cooperative and genuinely remorseful. The independent board member, a woman I'd worked with for 8 years and trusted completely, would start orientation by the end of the week. The Meridian restructuring filed cleanly. 9 properties now under my direct ownership rather than the shell structure I'd used for the first several years. Simpler. More legible. I was tired of invisible. By Tuesday, 3 people had emailed asking about the engagement dinner: family, friends, extended relatives, the kind of people who hear things through the particular telephone that is a large family. I didn't respond to any of them. On Wednesday, Daniel called from his own number. I answered. "I told Lauren everything," he said. "All of it. The original investment, the bridge loan, the line of credit. All of it." "How did she take it?" "She's processing." A pause. "She also said she was embarrassed about what she said at dinner." "I think she means it." "I think she does, too. I should have told her a long time ago." His voice was flat and honest in a way I hadn't heard from him since we were kids. "I should have told everyone. I kept thinking if I paid you back first, if I made it a done deal, then I could say I used outside capital early on and returned it, like it was just a footnote. Like it didn't shape everything." "It did shape everything," I said. "That's not a bad thing, Daniel. Most companies are built with other people's money. Yours just happened to be mine. Why didn't you ever say anything?" I thought about how to answer that. The honest answer was complicated. "Because I knew what it meant to you," I said finally. "The story of building it yourself. I understood that. I didn't want to take that from you." I paused. "But you took something from me, too, every time you let someone at that table feel sorry for me without saying a word." He was quiet for a long time. "I know," he said. "You're good at your work, Daniel. That's real. Don't let the investment be the thing you hide. Let it be the thing that shows you had good judgment at the beginning. You found the right capital. You used it well. You built something that works. That's the real story. That's a more generous version than I deserve right now." "Probably," I said. "But it's true." He laughed, a surprised, tired sound. "I'm sorry, Claire. I know." We talked for another 20 minutes. It wasn't the kind of conversation where everything gets resolved, the kind where someone cries and someone forgives and there's a moment of music and warmth. It was just 2 people talking honestly for the first time in a long time, which is harder and more valuable than resolution. My mother called that evening. She wanted to talk about the hallway. About why she'd never asked. She cried, and I let her, and I didn't tell her it was fine when it wasn't entirely fine, but I also didn't close the door. She asked if she could come visit, not the building, not the portfolio, not the restaurants or the properties, just me. Just to sit and talk. I said yes. A few weeks later, a design industry newsletter ran a short piece about my firm's work with a sustainable architecture brand, a project I'd taken on because I loved the founder's vision and wanted to stay connected to the work that had started everything. The piece mentioned me by name, no longer anonymous. My dad texted me a screenshot. "I didn't know," he wrote. "But I should have asked. I'm going to ask more." I put the phone down on my desk, in my 3rd-floor apartment with the city light coming in, and I looked at the walls I'd chosen and the furniture I'd restored, and the view I'd bought for exactly this reason, because some mornings you need to look out at something big and quiet and know you built your way. Here, through all of it, through every family dinner and every pitying glance and every conversation where you smiled and said, "I'm doing fine," and meant it in ways no one thought to verify. I was doing fine. I had been, this whole time. They just never thought to look.